This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's April 7th, 2026. On this day in 1862, the Civil War Battle of Shiloh reached its bloody conclusion alongside the Tennessee River. The battlefield is near Savannah, Tennessee, just north of the state line, near the point where Alabama and Mississippi touch. Just a couple of months prior, the Union had won control of Forts Donelson and Henry up on the Tennessee-Kentucky state line, and the Confederates decided after that to abandon Nashville and regroup farther south. Essentially, that had left a huge chunk of Tennessee in Union hands. With this battle, the rebels were ready to try and start taking that area back. But although they managed to kill more Union soldiers than they lost on their own side, ultimately the Southern forces couldn't gain control of the land. In all, 23,000 people died in the fighting, including one of the Confederacy's leading generals. Up to that point, no single battle on this continent had claimed more lives. Both sides claimed victory. Both sides used the battle as a reason to castigate some of their own leaders. And many in the South looked at it later on as an if-only moment, convinced that a few small changes could have changed the tide of the war. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Soon after the real Battle of Shiloh ended, a different version of it started to emerge. The stories that were swapped as soldiers passed nights together started to warp the truth. Maybe on purpose, maybe not. But over time, some accounts merged, other details were embellished. That's how human storytelling tends to go. But eventually, as those stories were written down, they calcified into received wisdom. The American Battlefield Trust has an article detailing myth after myth of what happened at Shiloh, some of which still shows up in the historic markers and place names at the battlefield itself. If you've been there, the bloody pond you may have heard about probably didn't exist. And there are photos from the time that show the so-called sunken road was only eroded by a few inches, not several feet. So it wasn't a natural defensive trench for anyone. People's ideas of who did and didn't turn things around in the fighting were pretty far off from the truth, too. General Ulysses Grant, who was there, later called it the most perpetually misunderstood battle in the entire war. That change in the story is just one example of a phenomenon that happened on a much larger scale all over our region. Now, my grandfather grew up just across the river from Shiloh battlefield, and so did his grandfather. And when I look back at what information I can find about my ancestor, Ezekiel Couch, all indications point to him likely having been on that property, able to see and hear the battle as it raged, probably close enough to smell the gunpowder and breathe in the smoke. He was still a teenager at the time. He hadn't yet gone off to fight. By the end of the war, he was in the Army. The Union Army, not the Confederate. That fact was a huge surprise to me when I discovered it, and to my father and my aunt when I told them. Grandpa was already dead by then, so I couldn't ask what he knew of his granddad's war service, but it seems that at some point the fact that he fought for the quote-unquote other side became a family secret. Historically speaking, the idea that a Tennessee boy joined the northern side is actually not surprising. Not entirely, anyway. This state was pretty split on secession. The first attempt to get voters to agree failed, and tens of thousands of Tennesseans did take up arms for the Union. But in the aftermath of the war, some of that nuance dissolved. The Union may have won the war itself, but it didn't win over white Southern minds. In some ways, the South became even more thoroughly Confederate after the actual Confederacy was dead and gone. What's been called the lost cause mythology spread and rewrote people's memories of the conflict, of what led to it, of what it meant to be Southern, inventing a story that was more gone with the wind than actual fact, although it was taught to many as if it was fact. Much has been written and theorized about what led to the embrace of the lost cause mindset or how it could have been avoided. And I bring it up right now as a simple caution. We study history to understand the backstory of our own time, but also to learn lessons about what works and what to avoid. And one of the lessons of the American Civil War is that you can win the war without winning people's allegiance. I don't think there's anyone who would say this country handled Reconstruction and the reentry of southern states back into the Union very well. The grandchildren of Civil War veterans seem to have made a concerted effort after World War II to be far more careful with how they handled Germany and Japan, carefully structuring that post-war period and bringing those countries back into normal relations with the rest of the world. Not that they were perfect either, but they paid attention, they took notes, they tried a different tack. And I point this out to raise the question of whether we are remembering and trying to learn and do better in our own time. Because in the past few months, our nation has taken action in places like Iran and Venezuela that are pushing those countries to inflection points. And now is a moment when the people in those nations start building their next set of foundational stories that could affect diplomatic relations with the United States for generations to come. In just a few minutes, what can one Tennessee hospital tell us about the rural healthcare crisis? That's coming up after the newscast.
We know that local government isn't the only part of your life.
Like the mayor, I know that city government isn't the only thing you're concerned with.
We are still struggling to find affordable housing.
They're taking over this bus stop.
That's one of the unique challenges with my business.
I'm WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams. I'm working to break down topics like transit, housing, and local government to make sure that when you are thinking about Metro, you're getting the full story. Follow my latest stories at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The Tennessee General Assembly has passed a measure that would make it a state crime to remain in the United States after a final deportation order has been issued. The measure is part of an immigration package proposed by U.S. Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller. Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson sponsored the bill. The Franklin Republican says the bill would not do much under the Trump administration, but it would make a difference under a different administration with different immigration priorities.
Under current law, well, you have to, I guess, defer to who is in the White House at the particular time, and if the occupant of the White House is actually enforcing federal immigration law.
Immigration attorneys have criticized the bill, saying final deportation orders are not always the last say on an immigration case. The bill now heads to Governor Bill Lee's desk for his signature. Despite other pieces of Miller's legislative package passing both chambers, this may be the first bill to make it to Lee's desk since the House and Senate versions of the bill are in sync. In Tennessee, you're allowed to protect against theft or trespassing on your property, but you're not allowed to kill someone in the case of property crime. WPLN's Cynthia Abrams reports that could soon change.
Right now, deadly force is only permitted in self-defense. But Representative Kip Capley is sponsoring a proposal to expand its scope.
Basically says that if deadly force is your last and only option to protect your private property, you can use it.
For example, it would permit Tennesseans to shoot to prevent trespassing or arson or robbery. There are restrictions.
And you have to reasonably believe that you can't protect your property otherwise. So it's we're not shooting the pizza man.
But many people are concerned. Stephen Crump, on behalf of Tennessee district attorneys, testified against the bill.
Somebody stepping into your ditch or stepping into your yard, somebody turning around in your driveway would authorize the use of deadly force. We think that is, again, a significant departure from what we have previously used self-defense for, and believe that this is very problematic.
And Tracy Beard with Housing for All Tennessee says this bill poses another risk.
When we think about trespassing or the issues that happen with that, our unhoused friends are squarely in the middle of those types of bills. And so what you're going to see with a bill like that being passed is there is a huge potential for life being lost.
Tennessee last updated the deadly force law in 2021. When it made it easier for people who had acted in self-defense to prove they were immune from lawsuits. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
The bill will be heard in the House Judiciary Committee later today. A Veterans Affairs clinic is set to close in McMinnville, about 75 miles southeast of Nashville. Some 2,000 Warren County veterans will soon have to get care elsewhere. Their other options include facilities in Tullahoma and Cookeville, both more than 30 miles away. In a letter yesterday, Congressman Scott DesJarlais, who represents the area, along with both the state's U.S. senators, raised several questions. They're asking the Department of Veterans Affairs if external providers are an option, if those providers even have the capacity to support the influx of veterans, and if all those affected have been notified of their options. The clinic's closure was announced in early March and is set for the end of May. New numbers show Nashville's downtown tourism district is generating even more money than previously understood, and that's fueling new ideas among state lawmakers for how to spend it. The surplus cash tops $500 million and is held by the Nashville Convention Center Authority. More than a decade ago, when the Music City Center was built, officials funneled multiple tax streams into paying off the project. Those include hotels and rental cars, as well as a portion of sales tax throughout a tourism zone that encircles downtown. The Nashville Business Journal reports the surplus has more than tripled in 3 years. It's only occasionally been tapped into, including some emergency payments to the broader metro government during tight fiscal times. Tennessee Republicans previously considered reworking the funding streams to be less lucrative. Now a new proposal instead looks to define how the surplus would be spent. Among the ideas up for consideration this week are channeling dollars into the East Bank revitalization, doing more to court a Super Bowl, and funding more downtown safety measures. NASA's Artemis II mission is underway in a 10-day journey around the moon. It's the first time in 50 years that NASA has sent astronauts to the moon. And Tennessee will be represented for another Artemis lunar mission. Geologist Jeanette Luna with Tennessee Tech University has been selected for Artemis IV, which will land on the moon. She's part of the science team who will help determine which rocks should be collected and brought back to Earth. The mission is tentatively set for early 2028.
You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org.
America's rural hospitals are closing at an alarming pace, and Tennessee has the highest closure rate. In a series of reports this month, WPLN takes an in-depth look at the crisis and what is being done to reverse course. Health reporter Catherine Sweeney takes us to Linden, a Tennessee town that watched its hospital go dark. But this one is now on the path to recovery.
Linden is a river town, home to fewer than 1,000 people, about 90 miles west of Nashville. It's in Perry County, one of the poorest counties in the country, according to state data, but it still had an operating hospital, even though in nearby counties they were shuttering. Mayor Wes Ward has been in Linden his whole life.
There was something definitely wrong somewhere, some red tape, some bureaucracy, something that was causing the closure of so many. I mean, it wasn't just a coincidence that all these small communities lost their hospital at one time.
In Waverly, about 40 miles north of Linden, the hospital nearly closed. The one in McKenzie, 70 miles northwest, wasn't as lucky. It did close. So did the one in Parsons, 20 miles west.
We were sitting right in the middle of all that, so yeah, we knew that it was a ticking time bomb, you know.
The bomb went off around Thanksgiving of 2020. The Perry County Community Hospital was one of the closures that made Tennessee the state with the most rural hospital closures per capita in the country. More than a dozen rural hospitals have closed since 2010, and even now, reports indicate 9 more are teetering on the edge of closure. For Ward, losing Perry County's hospital was personal. A few years ago, he was feeling pretty rough after clearing some land on a bush hogger. Later that night at home, he passed out.
I wake up, feel like somebody's standing on my chest, keys, stuff laying on the floor. Get up and drive out to the hospital, walk in. Everybody's like, "What are you doing here? I had a heart attack."
How do you think it would have gone if the hospital wasn't open?
I probably wouldn't be sitting here. So I'm probably a walking testament to rural health.
Technically, Perry County residents can get to a hospital in Jackson, about 60 miles away, or they could go a bit farther, an hour and a half, to Murray Regional or one of the major hospitals in Nashville. That's a long way to drive if you're sick or even need basic health care. Many don't have a car. Mayor Ward says there's an arguably even more common struggle, having an unreliable car.
They know they can take one of these back roads into town. And, too, a lot of people have never drove on the interstate and won't drive on the interstate. And, they've never been to Nashville. They've never been out of Perry County. And they'll let a small problem turn into a big problem.
That's for locals. Lacking a hospital can be dangerous for other people, too. One thing about rural Tennessee, it's pretty. People want to be outside there. Perry County is no exception. The Buffalo River runs right through Linden. It draws canoers, and its winding scenic roads draw thousands of tourists seeking other outdoor adventures, like riding motorcycles.
That first year the hospital closed, I remember it seemed like we had a motorcycle wreck every weekend that whole first year, you know. But at least that's behind us now.
That's because Linden residents have their hospital again. It's reopened due to the efforts of Braden Health.
It's more than just one specific thing that causes that many hospitals to fail.
Kyle Kopech is the COO of Braden Health. The company is on a mission to change policies and attitudes so that failed rural hospitals can reopen and stay open.
Our perspective is it's some of the outdated legislation. It's some bad actors mixed in that eroded trust. It's very bad management. And it's most importantly, just the community does not want to go there anymore.
Braden has now reopened 4 hospitals in rural Tennessee, Perry County being the latest.
Perry County Hospital, it's back. Thank you.
Much of Linden turned out for the ribbon cutting to reopen Perry County in September.
We have a brand new lab with all state-of-the-art equipment. You can peek in there and see.
Haley Sanders is the hospital's new CEO.
We're here today not just to mark a new beginning and not just opening a new hospital, but to restore trust and dignity and care to a community that needs care so much.
People started coming in for treatment, in many cases offering a glimpse of what was happening when the hospital was closed for so many years. Sanders describes one of the patients that stuck with her.
She told me that she didn't want to go to the hospital in the next county, so she waited 5 days because she had kept hearing on the radio that the hospital was going to open, so she waited 5 days for the hospital to open. So by the time she got here, she was so sick she was, really close to dying. These people just need to know, it's open and ready to take care of all their needs, no matter what they are.
Tennessee's current rural health landscape is plagued by hospital closures, reduced medical services, and worker shortages. But Perry County Community Hospital sends a message. Rural health care is not a lost cause.
In rural America, everyone knows small towns, word spreads, then patients start coming in. And then we work really hard to treat them well. And then they tell more people that they were treated right. And that's the secret for us for building community support. It's a very slow thing.
Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
On today's episode of This is Nashville, you'll hear about solutions to fill the gaps in rural healthcare. Our Healthcare Hollow series is made possible in part by the NIHCM Foundation. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. A little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener-supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.